Hello folks, I'm L.A. Little and this is your weekly TA Wrap, where we take a look at these markets and we do it from a neoclassical perspective, asking ourselves what happened last week and what does it tell us about the coming one. You know, I do this show once a week every Sunday night live at 9 o'clock Eastern Time here from the base of what has been a very cold, snowy Rocky Mountains. It was snowing again today and continues to snow as I speak. These markets aren't cold though. They're heating up again. Let's pop over and take a look at them and see what's going on. You know, in general, I think when I last talked to you on Thursday, I suggested that what it looked to me was that we'd set up a buy the news, off the sell the rumor. And that is indeed what they did. They came in, actually they came in, it was kind of interesting, they came in Friday morning before the market opened, started pushing this thing higher. This is the S&Ps. S&P's trying to get back up here and go test a high again. Volume really wasn't there on Friday, which was kind of interesting. But it doesn't matter until you actually test something. It got over that high from Wednesday, the big bar, that was the doji bar. So to me, it's back into the low now of that prior high. And if we look at that number, that low was 1803, almost 1804. We closed right at it, 1805. So we're back into the bar. You know, the suggestion here is that the S&Ps are going to try to get higher. The one that's already gotten higher is the NDX. The NDX, the big three, Microsoft, Google, and Apple, they've been leading this guy higher. You know, you kind of got a hanging man, which will itself be interesting to see if it comes back. That high was 3501. It closes at 3504. Volume slightly less, slightly more, but again, there was no swing point high. It just got over the previous high, only consolidated 3 bars. This has now set up an ABCD structure, another one inside the ones that are already there. That structure looks to take it, let me see if I have the numbers on that one. I was looking at some of these numbers earlier today. That bigger one inside of it is from 31. Yeah, the bigger one inside is from here, and that structure 3615. I think I'm looking at the wrong numbers. Hang on just a second. Let me get the bottom here. That low is, yeah, that's okay. Now I see what I'm doing. Okay, let's back up again. So the nested structure that's inside here is actually a larger one, and that one is from this low, right? So we have this low up to here, back down, and then back up. That number projects to about 3,600. We're trading much lower than that. I mean, we're at 34, 35, right? So we've got another 100 points if you're going to finish that one. This ABCD structure here, 33.59, the high 35.01, so that's roughly 50 points. No, 40, yeah, about 50 points, and then yeah, they could chip to about 3,500. So yeah, it would bring us in the ballpark. The main thing is that it's over the top, right? Yeah, the volume wasn't great, but if it holds it, it will continue on. And what we really should look at in conjunction with that is the SMHs, because the SMHs, they actually pushed over the highs. These guys did a full breakout. They did it over multiple swing points on the daily time frame. So you have a breakout here, here, and there, 3 swing point highs. You go above it, you hold above it. If it's able to hold this area, this is about a third of the NDX. This will push it higher. That will bring that NDX on up higher. You can see here we had a range that was setting up, had been setting up for a long time, right? They got over it. They got over this range that had been in place on the weekly, and now they're pushing higher. So now the question is, you know, if you want to watch something to gear you as to what's next, SMHs are the one to watch. Volume pushes up 3 days in a row, breaks out over the highs. Now they'll have to hold it and extend it. And if so, that NDX is going to go higher. Now the NDX is the only one that's broken out so far. If we look at the Dow Jones, it actually pulled back far enough, you know, to break a swing point low. And that's the first break on the swing point low we've seen. We saw the break here. Of course, it's back over it now. Now the question will be is, can the Dow get back over the highs and join the rest of them? Or is the Dow going to fail at the highs? Once you get these tests, once you get the breaks, then the question becomes, is this now a range trade or is this something different? Because usually when you get that, right, you got a sideways trend now, you got to get back over that high or you're in a range. This wasn't the classic range trade setup, but it may in fact be a range. If the Dow's in a range, if the NDX or the SMHs can't push that much higher, then everything's going to get stuck in a range, and that's what you have to be watching. IXIC looks about the same. The only index down last week was the Russell. In terms of any percentage, it was down about 1%. It also has a little ABCD structure starting to take place. And you can read these any way you want to. And what I mean by that is you could say, okay, yeah, this is an ABCD structure on the upside, right? The other thing you could do is you could turn around and say, oh no, this is potentially setting up some sort of an ABCD structure on the downside. You don't really know which one it is or if it's either until you get a little bit farther or until you get some clues. For example, the SMHs breaking out, the NDX breaking out, or in the other case, the Dow Jones giving a mixed signal going the other way. So right now, you have to side with the trend. The trend has been up. There's no reason to step away from that to all of a sudden assume that somehow this trend that has been up for so long is going to stop. At the same time, it's not a clean signal, right? And it's not a clean signal just on our markets, but if we push over and we look at the world markets, there you'll see that it's not a clean signal at all. In fact, it's fairly clear that there's problems. I'm bringing up the CACs. We talked about the CACs last week. The reason we brought this up and the reason we were watching it is just like we saw in the SMHs breaking out multiple time frames, or excuse me, multiple swing point lows. We had the same thing here the other way, right? We had multiple swing point lows broken to the downside. That gave us a quick 2-3 bar push, 1 bar, 2 bar. Here's the third one. You push down. You're getting the bounce now. That bounce should take us back up to this area potentially to test these and do a retest and regenerate lower. If it does that, and if you look over here on the weekly, you actually had a swing point low broken here as well. The range trade up there was broken. The weekly is doing a test now of this support zone that's anchored here and here. We're into that support zone. We tested it the first time. Volume, fairly heavy. Let's see what the numbers are comparatively. On the weekly, 4.8. The breakout bar had 5.7. So you can see we don't have the volume. That says this thing should bounce up here and retest, and then attempt to regenerate lower. When it does, that will be the key test, right? Can it break out here or not? If it can't, if it comes back, doesn't have the volume, you don't find sellers at lower lows, all it was a wider range that set up. If it does, then it's a different story. But right now, expect a bounce and then some sort of a pullback. That bounce is probably going to let our markets move higher and achieve some of the objectives they have. For example, remember we had an SPX objective of 1819. We're not that far away from it. 14 points is really nothing in this market. So we could get that push back up on our markets this week in front of the Fed. No big news this week. Drift higher. Kick off the next set of targets. Then see this one kick in, push us back down, pull us back in, keep us in some sort of a tighter, nominal new highs, but not break away and just run away yet. And if we look over, let me pop into the DAX, because the DAX also is not as if it's struggling, but it did come back in to this range, right? Didn't quite get to the bottom. Volume's big down here. This looks to me like you're going to get some sort of an ABCD structure in the same form, and then it's going to also test that swing point low and try to break it, right? Because you pushed down with decent volume as you came down. Now you're bouncing. Get back up here, test into that resistance zone, which it looks like it'll do tomorrow, right? And then turn around, come back the other way. If that's what happens, I don't think our markets can just run higher yet. And so overseas markets, even though we've been immune to a lot of what's happening over there, the overseas markets suggest to me that we're probably not going to get a nice, we're not going to get another up move, but an up and then back down move. FTSE, metals heavy, they're going to get a bounce too. Looks to me like they'll come up and try to do a retest regen as well. Setting up a farther move back down, another test. If I look elsewhere, it's not as bad. Some of them are, some aren't. For example, if I go over to Asia, the Hong Kong's still nicely holding. It's got testing of this weekly highs up here. It's still holding the breakout on the daily. If I look at Taiwan, that also wants to test the highs again. It's up here pressing against the highs. Gaps up, looks to me like it's going to try to get up there as well. If I look at Brazil actually is just finishing off a bearish ABCD on the daily. It was a small one, it's finished it off. And on the weekly, coming back really no volume into some nice high volume bars. This is where Brazil should get its bounce. Over on the Australia, and I'm looking at some of the materials that feed China. It's interesting that these guys have broken down as far as they have, although they have finished their ABCDs, should get bounces and do retest regens on the way down again and test back into these highs on the weekly. But they can't get any traction even though China looks like it's trying to. So something is not quite right there in terms of which one's telling us the truth. And if I look at Toronto, this also has a range breakout. You can see the range here that had held for quite a while. Now it's got the breakout right to the downside. It's coming back up. The retest regen is off of this area. Again, same sort of thing here. Come down, potentially set up some sort of an ABCD structure to get lower. All right, how much it bounces depends. Right, if it doesn't bounce as much, right, then the structure is a lot lower. So mixed overseas, couple markets still looking okay, but a lot of them looking like they want to come lower. So now let's go back to our markets and let's pull in and look at the major sectors. And what I want to look at there real quick is just like what is and isn't moving. And what I want to point out to you is that even though it's not bad, what we're starting to see here is also range trade setup possibilities. So you have a range here, right? You had range down here, you broke out, you made a new one. Now you've got a little small one up top. The lows, and the reason I say range trade is if you start looking for your lows and saying, oh, how close are we or did we get? Well, we got right to it on the IYT. If we don't break out, right, the next trip down raises the possibility, increases that possibility we're going to break it. And that sets up the larger range. Right now we're in a range. We're in a range here. We did break here on the XLB. It's range trading already. If we look at the XLP, same story, range trading already. Broke on the downside of that swing point high. You can see the markers. You know, you just look to see if whether we got a sideways trend or not. We do. These are all setting up range trades. They're either in them or they're trying to set them up. There's only 2 or 3 sectors that are truly still strong. XLK, still strong. The XLV, still strong. But most of the others, range trades. So if your sectors are starting to push more towards, they look like range trades. If we look overseas and we're seeing ABCD structures that are bearish, and we're just getting into the bounce, that suggests to me that we're going to go to the tops of the ranges, probably fell, and then work back down and stay inside those ranges. And then the real test is what happens overseas. So when you start putting the whole picture together, it looks to me like, yeah, we can push a little bit higher, but I just don't think we can take off yet. And I would expect us to bounce more tomorrow, and then we'll see how Europe trades tomorrow as well. And when Europe gets up to a point where it wants to fall, then we see whether we can disconnect from them and keep pushing or not. When I look at the sectors, the suggestion is we're probably not. We're probably going to stay range bound here, testing the top part of it, maybe making nominal new highs, maybe finishing off the ABCD structures that are smaller, and then pulling back one more time for the next week, potentially into this week, into the next week where the Fed has its meeting. And maybe that sets up another buy in the news. It all depends, I think, on how the overseas markets play, because right now I think the overseas market is what can hold us back, and it looks to be actually doing that. Quick look at the ox markets. There's 2 or 3 things here worth pointing out. One is, we've been seeing a lot of strength in the euro again. I thought Draghi was going to try to talk it down last week. Well, if he tried, he didn't do very good. And so what we've been seeing here, and it looks like we're going to probably continue to see, is we've been seeing these ABCD structures play out to the top side, right? There's one there. Now you've got another one. This one just about completed already, right? I would expect it does it again, tries to do it again, tries to work its way back up to the highs up here. If you look at it on the weekly, this ABCD structure got within like 6 cents of a completion. Now you've got a new one taking place, right, that could take it up even higher if, in fact, these things can continue to work their way up. The dollar on the other side of the coin, not nearly as pretty, right? The dollar's doing exactly the opposite, and it's trying to work lower. What's fascinating with this, and the reason I turned to the euro first, and here you can see the dollar trying to work lower, it had a decent set of buyers come in off this break of the low. It did a retest and is trying to regenerate lower, even though it did break out to the top side, right? If we look at that retest regen, there's the low. We did get above it, right? But we couldn't hold it. Now we're back into it. If it gets in below this, folks, it's going to test the lows again. That's not that far away. Those lows are not that far away either. So we'll see, if this dollar continues to push back down or not. It's right at a key area here. This is the place it's going to have to hold. Let's look at what's moving off of this, though, which is kind of interesting, which is gold. Gold, even though the dollar's getting weaker, even though the euro is getting stronger, that typically has been good for gold, but not now. Gold just keeps working lower. Now, what's interesting with gold is if you count these structures and you look them over, this is an ABCD structure from here, and it projects down to about right there, right up in this area on the weekly. Not the lows, but close. Those lows have volume. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this thing actually go down and try to test them on this straight down move again and fail, and then work its way back up again. If I look over at silver, silver's already completed ABCD structures on the way down. And so that's what's making me think that gold, you've already got an ABCD down here that's already done. This one's done. It's done on the daily too. I could draw that one. It's done long before it ever gets to the low. Will this one extend farther, get down here and fail? Kind of looks to me like that's what's going to happen. But of course we need to see the test and see what it does. If so, maybe silver, maybe gold are finally going to put in some sort of a bottom and try to work their ways back up the other way. The last thing I'll point out, and then I'll go to a few questions that I have time for here, is the bonds. The bonds, I spoke about these last week, Thursday in particular. They were down here testing. They got a little bounce on Friday, nothing special. This is a key chart. If the bonds start to break, this market's going to have a hard time, a very hard time. This is the range it's still trading in on the weekly. It did have a couple of signs here that made me think that it was trying to put a bottom in, right? We had these nice big pushes, but then we had decent volume to the downside, right? Got a little weak bounce off of it, and now we're coming down again. That could be an ABCD structure to the downside. That break, if it happens, that's going to push bond yields over 3%. And believe me, the market's going to start to choke if this thing starts to just drive to the downside. So bonds, another place to watch. There's 2 or 3 key areas I've mentioned already. The semiconductors breaking out, holding. The NASDAQ index doing the same. It's already broken out. Can it hold and extend? Will the IXIC follow? Will the bonds break down and ruin the party? Will the retest regen on the European markets take place and do ABCD structures to the downside? All of those are things that are going to move the rest of the markets. Those are the markets to watch. You're always looking for what's moving, what's coming up, what's going to do test, and then you're using that information to make your decisions. Looks to me like those are the key ones coming up. Let's take some of your questions. I had one emailed to me. Let me do that one first, lest I forget. And let's see. The question was PFE, and let's see what Brian is asking me here. So Brian says, thanks for the weekly videos. I do weekly videos to all the subscribers. He's asking, or actually thanking me for what he thought was a useful video, and then says, can I ask you go over PFE in your nightly video? ABCD down may be forming after breaking the swing point low on a daily. Okay, so what Brian's looking at is the potential for this to be some sort of an ABCD down, right? And there was a big volume bar, this big wide price spread bar. So let's take that back off so we can see it. So that high 31.43, that's going to be the key area on the way back up. Can this thing get back over 31.43? If not, that would be the area that you'd set up the ABCD structure down, which would take you back into this big bar, into this area. And so Brian's question is that the buy? Right down here. If you look over on the weekly, this was a suspect breakout. And let's see if we did the retest. We did it immediately. So we've already done the retest regen. So the volumes here are not heavy. You had some big volumes down here. I have no idea why. That high had about 180. The breakout had 140. We're coming back with 118. Yeah, so that price point this swing point high here also retested, regened right away, I think. Let's see, 30.43. Yeah, it did. In volumes, 131, big wide price. So the top of that looks like a great spot. That's 30.74. And the top of this one is 30.58. Is that right? 31.15. 31.15, 30.74. Brian's question is 30 and a quarter a good spot. 30 and a quarter is back to the bottom of this. Yeah, I think anywhere from 30 and a quarter up to about 30.70 is a good spot. And that's probably what's going to set up. And yeah, you're on the right track here looking at it. So what you want to see is you want to see how it handles this bar as it gets back into it. Does volume just die? I suspect it will. And I suspect this will come on back down just like you're thinking. And then when it gets down here, you want to see that it has no volume on that test. And that's probably a good buy spot. For a trade at least. All right, let's see. Let's see here. Feedy asks about WFC. Let's see what WFC looks like. All right, so what do we got here? So the question is 43.40 a good place to buy it? Yeah, I think what you're probably going to see, Feedy, is this thing's probably going to come right back up and test the top, and you're not going to get an opportunity on this move to do anything, right? I think it's going to come right back up here and test it. The key area, just like we just looked on PFE, the key area on this one is this bar, the third, 44.28. If it gets over that, it will test the top. If it doesn't, right, then you can get a retest of these lower areas, and it looks to me like what you should be looking at is the November 8th bar, the 13th bar, and the bottom of the 15th. That's kind of the best area short term, right? It's this little area right there that looks the best. So that would be where I would be looking at it potentially to buy it. What you really would like would be a test all the way down to here. Now to get that, you know, these things would have to do ABCD structures, and that's longer term. Let me go over and look at the weekly real quick. So this price point is, yeah, see, that's the high of that bar, 41.51, and 42, that's the bottom here, 41, yeah. So, you know, the ideal spot to me would be back here. I don't think you're going to get a shot at it here. If it comes back, you potentially could buy it here. You're going to have a tight stop, though, which lowers your probabilities. And if it fails here and comes back, I probably wouldn't buy it that deep. Because if it fails here and comes back, right, you're going to set up an ABCD structure on the way down. In other words, you'll have an A here, maybe a B there, and then you'd probably project down a little bit lower. So I think you got to wait. I think you got to wait until you get deeper before you can try to buy this one. Let's see what the next one is. Ralph, hope you had a good weekend. Yeah, I did. Thanks. Next question, ERB. Let's see what we got on ERB. So, ERB, and I'm not familiar with this one, so let's see what we got here. So this trades in the healthcare sector, ERBA Diagnostics. This is a nice spike. Okay, so the first thing, let me pull over the monthly. The first thing is it got over the monthly, didn't have the volume, right? So it's a suspect breakout. That high is a $1.80. So the $1.80 number I would keep in mind. Okay, so now $1.80. 165 is this high, right? And then the low here, that price point is 191. Okay, so the question is, the weekly and the daily look appealing. Yeah, I think this area, you know, you want to get as close to 165 as you can. And then I would have a tight stop on it. I just wouldn't give it any room. But I don't know if you'll get that deep. Somewhere between about 191 and 165. So maybe you put a little bit on up there, and then you put the bulk of it on down here, as long as it has no volume as it drifts in, and you try to catch it there. All right, folks, I'm out of time. I have given you my thoughts for the week. I believe we're going to see this market try to work a little bit higher and then probably get pulled right back down. And we'll have to see how Europe wants to trade. I think Europe's the driver right now. We'll see from our markets 2 or 3 internal things that will tell us more. But right now it looks to me like, yeah, we push a little bit higher. Trend's still up. But I think it's confined right now to a range, maybe a nominal new high. Have yourself a great week, a profitable week. And I'll catch you tomorrow and we'll do it all again. Take care. Thanks a lot. Good night, folks.